Commercial finance for SMEs is a topic of growing importance, especially in a world in which we see, unfortunately, bilateral donors cutting down their budgets. So it's a topic that DCED will continue to pay a lot of attention to. The flip side of talking about commercial finance for SMEs is the notion that you need support organizations who are and can work with SMEs to make sure that that financing sort of is well utilized. Given the importance of that topic, we were quite happy today, a couple of months back, when Triple Jump knocked on our door and said, we want to talk more about this because we want to do more with ESOs and through ESOs. We want to move to a system of incentivizing ESOs that is more sort of results-based, different type of financing. And we also want to talk to the community of PSD donors and practitioners out there to talk about the lessons we are learning in this process. And that hence is sort of sets the scene for today. We have 4 speakers who will talk from a donor point of view, from triple jump point of view, but also from an ESO point of view, for instance, on why it's relevant to think differently about ESO incentivizing. I shouldn't say much more because 4 speakers, that's a lot, and we have only 1 hour. One housekeeping message from my side. There is at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A button. If you have questions that come up during the seminar, please write your questions in that Q&A section. So not in the chat, but in that Q&A session there, we can pick them up and then we'll sort of try to get them answered for you. On that note, I hand over to Harry Devonshire from Arcadius Foundation, a donor who has been at the forefront of basically supporting commercial financing of SMEs and hence also support to ESOs to facilitate all this. And he will sort of take you further into the topic and introduce the speakers. Harry, over to you.
Thanks, Harold. From one Harry to another. Welcome, everyone. It's great that you're here. We're going to be talking about results-based financing in the context of enterprise support. I've been asked to provide an introduction and then to moderate the Q&A. And we're joined by, I can't think of better people to be presenting on this. We've got Julia from Dutch Good Growth Fund, who have been at the forefront of building entrepreneurial ecosystems. Morgan at iGravity, who have done a lot of thinking and work on results-based finance. And we've got Aya from a very exciting enterprise support organization who's offered to be one of the guinea pigs for the pilot that's going to be described. And just a couple of headlines of why we're interested in this. For the last 10 years, we've funded a range of work in relation to enterprise support. And we've seen a huge variety in the impact and sustainability of that support. Now, we've found that there's actually 2 dimensions to that. On one hand, we put a lot of focus on what do ESOs need to pay attention to, and there's a growing evidence base there of what they need to, and scale might ring a bell, and as well as some of the RCTs that have come into the space. But on the other side, actually, we've found the quality of funding is a really important sort of stage setter and enabler or detractor from the extent to which ESOs can dedicate resources to really understanding the market, building quality products and services, diversifying their funding sources. And we've seen vicious and virtuous cycles. So on the vicious side, lots of sort of contracts to deliver activity-based work in relation to donor-derived priorities, and a lack of attention on entrepreneur centricity, enterprise support centricity, and donors following that lead within the realms of their strategy. And on the other hand, where we've seen donors paying attention to the quality of ESOs in being able to focus on their key clients and understand and respond to their needs, we've seen ESOs growing in quality, growing in sustainability, and looking pretty robust in even in times like now where we've got some significant countercurrents. So it's an important topic. Julia and team have been piloting one of a number of interesting efforts to try and develop instruments and incentives to address this. So I'm going to hand over to Julia and team who are going to walk you through what they've been exploring.
Thank you so much, Harry, and everyone here today. Thank you for the opportunity to exchange on our work. My name is Julia Ko, and I have been with Triple Jump Responsible Investment Manager for 10 years now. One of the funds we manage and I focus mostly on is called the Dutch Growth Fund. It invests in a variety of local finance providers, so SME finance is more adequately available to SMEs in emerging markets. And in some of these markets where investment opportunities are limited due to the nascent entrepreneurial ecosystem, including in terms of business development support, or in markets where actually the financial sector is developing and diversifying, but pipeline remains an issue, there is a very important role to play in developing ESOs. However, the quality of the outcomes and impact of ESOs vary greatly from one organization to another and from one country to another. So the system is underperforming, if you will. So last year, we set ourselves to better understand the system of ESOs to address what is not performing, and hopefully with like-minded ESO funders. And we first focused on designing a result-based finance instrument to incentivize positive outcomes and impact while fostering financial sustainability of ESOs. So if you go, Morgan, to the slide 3. So in an ideal world, if we wanted this system to be completely sustainable, we basically would have the clients of the ESOs, so these local enterprises, to pay for the services that they receive. But this is unrealistic. It's been tried with so many different models and in so many different markets. It's impossible for enterprises, especially when they are at such early stage of development and sometimes in very challenging environments, to be able to pay for the full services that they receive. So when we think about financial sustainability of ESOs, what we look at is the capacity of an ESO to cover its recurring rationalized operating costs through predictable revenue streams. And that is without relying on restricted short-term grants. An important source of revenue may come from multi-year contracts for executing efficiently costed programs packaged as products that basically people buy into. So if we move to the next slide, where we are now is that we as Triple Jump managing DGGF basically took the risk to go into basically working with Agravity to design a result-based finance instrument. It was a very large stakeholder engagement process. And so through this process, we basically identified two ESOs that we can support through a pilot of this result-based finance. And so one of them, OST, represented by EA today, will share a bit more of their perspective, because it has to be a win-win. I should say a win-win-win for the entrepreneurs, ESO, and the funders. And now we are engaging on a year of exchanging our learnings to see if we could identify like-minded ESO funders that we want to collaborate by committing our common resources to fixing the ESO system. Also identifying entities that we can support in a much more meaningful manner that ensures quality outcomes of their program, an expanded impact, and contributes to the financial sustainability of the sector. So I mentioned a few names, and I'd like now for Morgan from Agravity, who did a lot of the thinking behind, to explain a bit the basics around the logic basically of applying RBF to the ESO sector.
Thanks a lot, Julia, and hi from my side as well. So as Julia was saying, my name is Morgan. I'm working for iGravity, and we are specialized in the design and implementation of innovative finance mechanism, and results-based financing is one of our key instruments. And my task would be today to explain you a bit more about results-based financing. We'll see it's a term that we'll use a lot. It might sound a bit technical, but we'll keep it easy and make sure that we are all aligned and have the same understanding of the term. So what is results-based financing? As you know, results-based financing is a financial instrument, and it has gained really traction, especially among donors over the past years, because it's a more efficient way of spending their money. And the way it works is really simple. So if we apply it to the specificity of our current initiative, on one side, you have a funder. So in this case, it's DGGF, which will partner with an accelerator, in that case, OST. Together, they will come together and pre-agreed on results and the objective that they want to achieve. And often it's a discussion and co-creation process. In this specific case, it has been facilitated by iGravity. And then once the results are pre-agreed upon, then you will have the accelerators, which will start working toward these results. There will be really the necessity to report on the progress toward the results. And the funder on the other side will commit to pay for the results which are achieved. A lot of people think that when we speak about results-based financing, all the financing is tied to the results, but keep in mind that part of the financing comes also upfront. So at the signing of the contract, some payment is deployed to allow the accelerator to work towards the results, and then often you have a midterm and end-term payment based on the results. So that would be for the short definition. And then we would like also to speak about the opportunities. And here I will hand over to Julia and Eya so that they present you both perspectives from the donors and the accelerators. So Julia, over to you again.
Yes, thank you, Morgan. So to give you a bit of a perspective of a funder of ESOs, over the past 7 years, we committed 5 million euros to support 15 ESOs. And these 15 ESOs have supported 1,000 enterprises altogether. And all of that contributed to create and support 5,000 jobs. And also all these companies together have managed to raise, and I mean commercial external funding up to euro 25 million altogether. What we like about the work that we have done so far is that all the ESOs we supported still operate today. And they actually, on an average, the self-sustainability ratio is at 64%. And sometimes some of the organizations we came in, it was like 10%. So we were really happy to see that. However, I will be completely honest, this is a drop in the ocean. And so what we realized was that our partner ESOs appreciated our long-term and non-restrictive support. It's really focused on ensuring the execution capacity of their core business. And what they also liked was that with this long-term support, we created a bit the space for them to innovate and test business models. But what we want to challenge ourselves and our partner with, and what we believe in by applying a result-based finance instrument, is that we may be able to help them to transform faster by better aligning the incentives among funder, ESO, entrepreneur. So basically, the success of the entrepreneur makes the success of the ESO, which makes the success of its funder. Providing RBF gives an ESO really, I think, but Eya will tell us, the space and the mandate to focus on enhancing their service offering as a quality and cost-efficient product that others will buy into. It also equips them with the knowledge and know-how to monitor and amplify the outcomes and impact, especially compared to just measuring inputs and outputs. And here, actually, this is really a tripartite partnership, if you will, because iGravity will offer technical assistance during this pilot to our ESO partners to make sure that they actually have everything into place, the processes, the systems, and just that they embed basically this monitoring of results and the reflection around that in their day-to-day activities. And what we are hoping to do is to help these ESOs also efficiently validate, as to say, a more sustainable business model. As we, especially Triple Jump, managing public funds under this mandate of DGGF, it seems to us much more efficient and wise to reward the ESO to the extent they reach the agreed upon performance levels, instead of just asking them to, do support 20 companies in this sector and then the next year 20 other companies in another sector. So that's what the appeal is to us as a funder, and that we hope appeals also to other funders. And I'd like to have Eya kind of bring the perspective of an ESO then.
Thank you, Julia. I'll just start quickly by presenting Open Startup. So we are a nonprofit organization. We started in 2016. And what we do is we support early stage African startup. So we have program where we support these startup, and our offer and programs are very startup centric. So we have a strong mandate, but also we are in a very flexible and dynamic organization because we serve a tech ecosystem which evolves fastly. So we started. We were selected by DGGF and iGravity to test this RFP pilot. And so maybe I'll start by talking about some issues that we had with activity related funding. I mean, for us, we historically had a lot of restrictive funding, and we faced some difficulties because we wanted to keep our mandate and DNA, and we wanted to continue to serve the startups. And so the issue that we had were sometimes a lack of flexibility in terms of we needed to change very quickly our offer to keep the quality, and it was sometimes very difficult. The other thing with activity-based funding was the issues related to timeline. It was majorly aligned with specific agenda, very short-term cycles, which wasn't very interesting for us. We spent a lot of time on reporting our activities, which also kept the team away from executing. And sometimes, the budget were only aligned to activity and didn't take into consideration the overhead and other costs. So we were at this stage 1 year ago where we defined the strategy. We said we want to become a sustainable organization, and we were working on diversifying our revenues, working more with corporate CVCs, and also shifting from having activities, programs, from tracking, the quality of our trainings to also tracking the performance of our portfolio and of our startup. So this partnership came at the right time, and so we talked with DGGF and iGravity, and we started testing this pilot. I think what was very important as part of this initiative is not the financial part. The financial part is great, but also it was an exercise. We worked for 5 months with the team on really reflecting strategically on how to better define our impact, how to define our KPIs, how to work on our strategy, how to sustain OST. So it was really guidance and support. Of course, the flexibility, the fact that we can do whatever, we can use the approach that we want as long as we achieve and we agree on impact was very interesting for us because we move fast, we want to bring partners, and we want to keep this flexibility and agency to be able to deliver quality. We wanted to continue to serve startups, so we usually, all our program and approach is based on the startup needs. So we found the right balance where we maintain the quality, we serve our beneficiary, but we align also with the expectation of the donors. I mean, I think this is really, I mean, the most interesting part. Also, the approach, I mean, it may sound complex at the beginning. It was complex for us when we heard about RBF, but like the approach of really working together with the iGravity team, having work session for them to understand our mandate and understand what we do, and also for us to onboard and embrace this mechanism was very interesting. So I'll say flexibility, agency, and also really this strategic reflection that we did for the last 5 months to be able also to improve the way we measure our impact and we deliver our programs.
Thanks a lot, Aya and Julia, for sharing transparently your views. So to summarize, what we see when we use RBF, it's really that it can represent a shift in the way funding is deployed. So you can see on the left-hand side, you have what we call the traditional funding, which was also mentioned by Aya earlier, where it's more of a top-down funding from a donor, which is financing activities. So for example, it could be a certain program with this amount of companies. From what we call the results-based financing, where it's more of a partnership between two entities which agree to work with towards results. So I think it's really the key change. So with that, we would like to move towards the RBF pilot and maybe doing a bit of expectation management before we start. So we are really at the beginning of the pilot, meaning that the design has been completed, which is already a great step. We don't have the results yet to share. So please bear that in mind. So the idea of the coming minutes is really to explain you what the process was about and share the experience of both Julia, but also Aya, so that you can see how it could look like if this kind of approach is scaled later on. So to give you a bit of background, and I think it was mentioned by Julia at the beginning, but the RBF pilot started with a kind of research work where we did desk review. We engaged with a lot of different parties across the ecosystem, being donors, but also the ESO themselves and other ecosystem providers. And we tried to understand a bit what could be entry point for our RBF. And what we realized is that there are so many types of accelerator that it was really complex. So we were wondering how we can simplify this complexity so that we can design an RBF mechanism which can be applied across different contexts, sector, countries, whatever, that could be really applied by everybody. And that's why we decided to work with archetypes. And the way we did our archetype was specifically to inform the design of the RBF, as I was saying, and we decided to use 2 dimensions, which were aligned with the outcome that we discussed with Julia and other donors and Aya and other accelerators. And those 2 dimensions are on one side, the financial sustainability, and the second one is program quality. And financial sustainability, so I think it's something that we mention often. We had really difficulty to agree on a common definition, so we are trying with this one. The way we see it is really, as Julia mentioned also in introduction, the ability of the accelerator to cover its recurring operational expenses. And here there are different ways, depending on the stage and type of accelerator, to think about it. The first aspect would be looking at the cost effectiveness, so really making sure that the costs are optimized. The second one is the capacity of the accelerator to monetize their activities around a well-defined program. And the last one is the revenue diversification. Another aspect that we think is important when you think about financial sustainability is the quality of the partnerships that the accelerator is able to secure. Because with that, if you have longer term and really good partnership, that will help you to become more stable and grow as an accelerator. The second dimension is program quality. And here, again, we look at different aspects of program quality. One being really with the accelerator itself, so looking at the methodology, the track record of the accelerator implementing this well-defined methodology. The second one is looking at the enterprises. So what is the view of the enterprises and the perception of the value addition of the program for the enterprises, which is the client of the accelerator. And the last one is the outcome of the program on this enterprises development. So those were the two dimensions, and then we use them to define archetypes. So here on this slide, you'll find again the two dimensions, program quality on the vertical axis and financial sustainability on the horizontal one. And we define 6 types of archetype depending on the level of program quality and financial sustainability. And here again, with this framework, it allows us to work with any type of accelerator, because each time when we screen an accelerator, we will look at where the accelerator stands in terms of program quality and financial sustainability. And with the discussion, we'll see what could be entry point for the LBF to move the accelerator from where they are toward the right-hand side of the graph. So it's a simplified framework which allows really to work with different kinds of accelerators. And with that, maybe I hand over again to you, Eya, so that you share a bit your experience on what the work has been.
Yeah. So I think I shared a bit earlier, but so OST, we are HQ'd in Tunisia, but we are Pan-African. We started in Tunisia, but now we are Pan-African. Our regional focus is Africa, so we are serving startups from across Africa. We have Pan-African program serving startups from across Africa, and we have core program with partner that we build to serve these beneficiaries. In terms of the archetype, we have been positioned as emerging, solidifying. So the idea is for us to move a bit further to sustain the organization financially, and also to improve a bit the quality of the program, and also improve our capacity to monitor the results and impact of all our management performance system. What we offer in terms of services, so we have 2 offers. We have soft tech programs and deep tech programs. And what we provide is really, I'll say, a combination of networks, of access to investment, of access to talents, and a community for startup to thrive and scale. So we offer this combination, and this combination is our value proposition. And in each program, we try to make sure that we offer this to startups. So we worked on a strategy to sustain our offers. So currently we're working on implementing a consulting arm to be able to have more revenues or diversify our revenue streams, and on the other hand, to complement our technical assistance with the VC arm, with financial component, to be able to also really sustain the organization beyond the programs. In terms of our impact team, so our objective is to provide African entrepreneur exposure, as I said, networks, and unlock deep tech in Africa. We work with 3 main startups from 3 main stages: ideation, proof of concept, and acceleration. So we have specific programs depending on the stage, and we're currently 26 employees. Yeah.
Sorry, should I take over, yeah?
Yes, Morgan.
So I think this slide is more to use again the framework in which mention what the idea of the LBF is. So moving from an emerging, solidifying towards more flourishing accelerator.
Yeah, so the objective for us, we are positioned as emerging, and the idea is for us to move to flourishing accelerator indeed. And so what we worked on together with the DGGF and with the iGravity team is that we worked first on sharing our strategy, letting them know what are our objectives and what we want to achieve by the next 3 years, which are, of course, becoming a more sustainable organization, diversifying our revenues, but also improving the way we impact our startup and improving the way we measure our impact. We shared this, and on the other hand, they explained a bit the RFB model and really how we measure, how we can measure the results. And really, we worked on KPIs. So what we did is for each area, for the program, we tried to work together on setting and defining KPIs. And what was good is we had several sessions to be able to set realistic and feasible KPIs that at the same time were able to measure, to collect, and also to achieve by the time of the pilot. and also KPIs that made also sense for the DGGF and iGravity team. So this was very collaborative and very adapted to what we wanted to do. We also worked on defining the payment metrics together, like the percentage that was tied to result and the percentage that wasn't. And I think one good thing was that a portion of the budget was not tied to result, because we are an NGO and we need cash flow. So we had this budget that will allow us to deliver activities and to be able to be rewarded despite or regardless of the outcome. So another thing, maybe we had several discussions about really defining and being precise about the KPIs. We looked at each KPI that we set together, and we aligned on the definition for us to really make sure that we have the same perception of what to achieve, and we have the same definition of what success is for OST and for DGGF.
Thanks a lot, Leah. And with that, we can share a bit more the results of this intense and iterative process as Aya was sharing it. So high level, how it looks like. And again, I don't want to go too much in detail, but I think it's important that you understand the logic of how we did it. So you can see on the left-hand side, in the left part of the slide, we are presenting a bit how the payment of DGGF is split between different dimensions. So DGGF had a maximum budget or envelope per accelerator of 250,000 euro. And then we decided to split that along the different dimensions. And again, there is a lot of thinking behind that. So what is really the priority? What are the costs associated to achieving this kind of results? So really, it's an iterative process with a lot of data sharing between iGravity, Aya, and also discussion with Julia. And as you can see on the top, we find again the financial sustainability dimension and the program quality. What we realized during the discussion is that some payments should be more linked to a kind of technical assistance role, because IMM is really important to measure the success of an RBF. So there will be part of the payment, but a minimum part of the payment allocated to technical assistance, and the maximum of the RBF is coming to these two dimensions. So on financial sustainability, as Aya was saying, a lot of the weight is going to more the revenue diversification that OST is trying to achieve. So we looked also at the partnership, and again, there were a lot of discussion around what qualifies the partnership. So there is a more detailed definition, but we keep it high level here. And then on program quality, we also had long discussion on which program we should focus on, what is aligned with a strategy. And as they scale, BRAIN was really one of the key program, and it was important to maintain the quality. So here again, we are looking at more short-term metrics, which is looking at satisfaction score and making sure that as they scale, the quality is maintained or improved. And another one looking more at the result at entrepreneur level, so the capacity of the entrepreneur going through the program to secure a qualitative partnership.
And also we looked at, just to add, we looked at indicators that are achievable short term and other that need more time. So we had like this discussion where we really were able to have a combination of KPIs that really show that we have quality program, but at the same time that our startup, thanks to our intervention, are able to grow, and this more on the outcome, on how they achieve the partnership they sign, the revenue they get. So this combination was also balanced and very well adapted to also help us measure in a holistic manner how we impact our beneficiaries.
Yes. And another thing that I need to precise is that in this case, because it's the pilot and we wanted to show a result quite soon, the timeline is 1 year. You could do it with more years, and that way we were also limited in terms of KPI that we can choose, as Aya mentioned. And on the right-hand side on the slide, you see again an important part of the RBF, which is to look at when which payment is coming. And as I was mentioning at the beginning, a part of the payment, so around 30% of the payment, is upfront when contract is signed to allow OST to start working toward the activities. And then the rest of the payment, so still the majority of the payment is linked to results. And here there are some metrics for which result can be seen at midterm, and then a payment will be made based on a scale that we have defined. And we do the same end year. And with this, during the process, there is also alignment with DGGF, iGravity, and OST to make sure that OST really work and progress toward these results. Julia, any comments?
Yeah, maybe if I can add, actually, it was interesting because in this very large stakeholder engagement process, we consulted many ESOs and funders, right? And honestly, the ESOs, most of them viewed positively the RBF. They liked the alignment of incentives. They liked the fact that we had to align to the detail of what is the definition of every single KPI. And also that there is this technical assistance in it, right? Like we don't like set targets unrealistically and then go away and we'll be back in 1 year to see if you've done it, right? It's especially in this process, we have this already set up quarterly learning sessions. So, I mean, we need to all work and learn during this process. But it was interesting because quite a few funders were not really keen on it. They said that it sounded complicated. They doubted that the effort to change something in the way they usually work was worthwhile, since at the end of the day, you know, ESOs, if they really wanted to get where they wanted, they would just arrive there. So they were a bit doubtful about the incentive alignment part. So I wanted also to share my experience as a funder going through that. And I think there are a couple of things I really appreciated in this process. The first thing is that it's a much more efficient way to build pipeline and shortlist potential ESO partners, because the strong alignment has to be there from the start. Like there's no, you know, misunderstanding. Like you want to get there and it's my role to help you get there. It was very, very efficient. The other thing is that the engagement process to align on what we want to achieve as a win-win-win is, again, extremely efficient and effective. I mean, it's the perfect due diligence. You see if, you know, the team, we always had like weekly calls, you know, we engage the right people at the right moment. Like, I don't know, if there's a discussion more on the financials, then you bring your finance person, but not on every single discussion. Yeah, I think Aya mentioned really well, like, on the KPIs, like, you know, like we were aligned, this is what we wanted to do, but being able to write down in a very comprehensive manner, this is what it means, this is how we define it, and aligning also on this incentive scheme was great. It's basically a way to learn, can you work together? So I'm going in this partnership and the other partnership with the other ESO, very confident that we will work really well together. And then, of course, I had to defend that to our committee who approves all our budget. Basically, can we support this organization with this budget for this scope of work? It's not iGravity who did it. They helped me prepare everything, but I still had to use the same form I always use. It had to meet all the requirements that my mandate have. But it didn't require a different process or a different format. And actually, to write the proposal was much more easier, because I knew, I think, really the ins and outs of everything, because we had touched upon everything. And then, so now we're actually signing the contract with both organizations this week. And the contracting was particularly smooth because, again, we had pre-negotiated absolutely everything. So I use the same template I usually use, and then I just put in the annex the alignments that we had that would put. So again, in this case, it's really a tripartite agreement that enables to easily verify results and allows to rewrite the ESO on different key metrics of performance, like to the extent to which they perform. And I saw a few questions also, so I'll address them quickly in the chat. So I think all these questions about upfront payment, so we say it, we do it, like we would do even a milestone-based grant. We do an upfront payment that is 30%. Then there is the TA, so it's not like we set something and then we just wait for it, right? We work together on it. It's a true partnership. And there were a few other questions, but now I'm missing them. We can go to the question and answers maybe part after that. Maybe because I'm also conscious of the time, if we can move to the next step. So yes, I know what question there was. There was a question regarding the verification of results and the role of iGravity. The thing is, because we basically contracted iGravity as our partner to design the instrument and all of that, we also put into this relationship that they would do the verification of results and the TA to the ESOs during the pilot. So we have our own agreement with iGravity, and then we have our own agreement with OST. So that's how it works, at least for this pilot. And so, like also, thinking of moving forward. So this is really what I would say an action learning endeavor. So we will have like regular learning sessions internally, and then we'll make sure that we share that at midterm and end of term. So we would love to have follow-on webinars to keep you updated on how are things going. So what I hope and I look forward to is first hearing your questions and comments. I also hope that some of you will find it interesting, and we want to keep engaging with us as we will share what we learn and we implement these pilots. And I would also love to find a couple of like-minded funders that maybe they have never done that before. And the commitment I'm looking for is more like people keeping an open mind and being ready to exchange with us to try to advance basically towards a much more sustainable sector. So with this, I think we are very happy to maybe get some questions.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think just an early comment, results-based finance mechanisms can come in dizzying arrays of complexity. So very good job on making a nice and simple, a pretty simple model that aligns those incentives, and the testimony there from Aya on how this is a much improved process for you, and likewise for you, Julia, how it fits in with your existing processes and doesn't require a total revamp of how you fund. So I think, it's shaping up very positively. So over to questions. There's a number of questions. Keep them coming in. You'll see a Q&A box at the bottom. Don't put them in the chat, please put them in Q&A box. There's a little cluster of questions around which types of ESOs. So I think perhaps this goes to Morgan. Maybe you could take Marie Odede's question first, and relatedly Benson's question. So Marie's is, if implementers locally have cash flow constraints, who funds their overheads and financial requirements to deliver results? Does the RBF approach focus on larger institutions and exclude those who are working perhaps more locally?
So I can start on the type of ESO. So you recall we did this archetyping, and so depending on how you apply it to RBF, what we have been trying to show now is that it could apply with quite a lot of different ESO. So at the end, as soon as they have some IMM in place, in a TOC which is well defined and already a certain track record in program that they have been implemented, we can start working on an RBF. The level of ambition will always depend on where they are at. And it's also depend on the flexibility of the donors, right? Because if you want not to provide any TA and have high and ambitious target, maybe don't start with the nascent ESO, right? But otherwise, you could try it with all of them and adapt the type of RBF that you provide.
Great. So it sounds like you have depending on the funder interest, if you're interested in more nascent ESOs, then actually you can start in that lower quadrant, if you like, and think about how do we have sort of requisite results to help them take the next step.
Exactly, because you have seen we have a part which is TA, a part which is more RBF. So you could work maybe with more TA, a bit less RBF, more upfront payment. So it's really a flexible tool that depends on what the donors want to do and what the ESO also want to do.
And relatedly, I'm looking at Anne's question. So do you have a view on what type of ESOs can be supported by our RBF? So is this just accelerators and incubators, or is it other types of ESOs as well?
Well, I think that we made the work of Agravity bias because we have been supporting incubators and accelerators. I mean, there's a lot of ESOs, but we tend to focus on these two models because this is the models where we see the more in-depth support. It's really hand-holding of the companies, but that's based on our mandate and our experience. I think, again, like you could maybe certainly apply it to other types of ESOs here. I think it's really biased based on our experience and mandate.
Thanks, guys. And then looking at Diana's question at the top. So there's a question on does it allow, there's a number of questions in there. Does the funding allow for ESOs to decide what sectors and how they select the businesses, as opposed to the funders designating? Secondly, what happens when they have multiple RBF agreements and KPIs are different? How can they handle that?
All right, so I can start, and maybe Aya, if you want to add, but our role is not to tell an ESO what to do. Our whole pipeline building and shortlisting process is to find the ESOs that have a very clear positioning in the market, vision for where they want to go, the mission they want to do. We are an enabler. We are not telling them what to do. So we are actually, our fund is sector agnostic. We can have an ESO like OSC that is Pan-African. The other ESO we're going to work with is really focused on one market. We have supported ESOs that could even focus on like the blue economy. And we have other ESOs that have no sector specific. Again, we don't set what should be done there. We're here to enable an ESO to go where they want to go. And by discussing together, then we define what are these indicators that would show that they are getting where they want to go. I don't know if Aya, you want to
No, definitely. Anything? I mean, we select the sector that we want to select. The idea is really, we agree on the results, but then the approach and how we do things, we are the expert. The ESO is the expert. We do it the way we do it as long as we are able to achieve the metrics. I think the issue of not being able to choose is more on the activity funding mechanism, where really we have like specific programs in, for example, sometimes blue or green, and we have to execute programs in a specific sector. For this experience, we were very flexible in choosing our activities, our sectors, what we want to do.
Super. Looking at a couple of questions, just digging a bit more into the results piece. So there's a couple of questions asking about what about longer term impact that does take a bit more time to manifest. Could you expand on the extent to which this is included in this type of financing or this pilot and this model, and a little bit around what does the verification of that piece look like?
I can maybe start, and then Morgan, you can add to that. Again, this is a pilot, and it was biased on basically the timing we have for our things. We have actually been on average with any ESO for 4 to 5 years. So we like actually to be in a long-term partnership. But we thought that for a pilot, we needed to demonstrate it as fast as possible. So that's also why we pushed a bit for the 12 months. And on the side of the ESOs, it's actually the 2 ESOs we selected were kind of at a turning point, and they want to transform something in their organization, and they'd rather do it sooner than later. So that's why there was an alignment, but there's no problem with actually doing it on the longer run. To be honest, if these work really well, and then these two ESOs, want to move forward and would want to have us as a partner for, a lot longer than 1 year, yeah, they would be the first ones we would look at. So again, here it's biased on our need to prove a point very quickly.
And maybe Morgan, have you had experience in other RBF work where you have looked in the longer term, and what does that look like?
So normally the RBF we work with, they are more 3 to 4 years, and normally it's what is recommended, because if you do 1 year, then it's difficult to have the long-term impact. So as Julia was explaining, no, the idea was really to do 1 year, prove it, but and have this RBF as a starting point for a more ambitious and long-term RBF in the future. So I think you should not see this partnership as a one-off. So you start with 1 year, you build a bit the capacity with better IMM, and then the next RBF would be more looking at impact on the beneficiaries, long-term impact, and then you have also the funding, which is on a longer time frame. So really, now it's a pilot, and we have to take it like that, prove something, and expand it to have this more mid to long-term impact.
Super. Thanks, guys. Given your experience in this space, do you have a few sort of illustrative longer-term KPIs that you think would make sense?
So to be honest, there has not been many, also almost none, RBF in the ESO space, and that's why this work is super innovative and needed. There are other areas or sectors where it has been much more seen. But I think when we were designing the pilot, a lot of the things that we wanted to showcase is, for example, the capacity of an accelerator to have the company that they supported being investment ready and receiving this type of financing. And that's to prove that in a time frame which is 1 year might be a bit challenging. So I think that could be exactly one of the more mid-term KPIs that would be worth tracking. And again, more looking at the impact on the beneficiaries, it's often difficult. So that could be also something that is looking at the long-term impact.
It is cool for committed funders interested in improving impact effectiveness and want to push the boundaries of RBF. Ella, I can see that you'd like to jump in on one of the questions. I'm going to hand over to you for a moment.
No worries from my side. I'm just marking them as answered as we go. It just comes up with my name. So over to you again.
I see. Okay, super. So could you just, there's another question there from Diana, just to clarify, Julia, are there any differences in the due diligence that you've gone through in approving this versus a different grant? And the question's disappeared. Anyway, I think it was linked to the answered one. But yeah, you said it's the same sort of grant approval process. And on the due diligence, what did you have to do differently? Where did you have to put in more legwork? Where did you save time? What had to change?
I think that it's just that, to be fair, it was a lot more structured. It was a lot more structured because we knew what we wanted to focus on, because we have these dimensions, right? So you spend more time on these dimensions and understanding how the organization sees them, what has been their track record, what are they really struggling with, and where do they want to get. That's how you're going to be able also to define the indicators. And it was also a lot more structured that we had these regular, like, weekly calls to make progress on it. So it might look a bit intensive, but at the same time, it saved us a lot of time, because usually in my due diligence, then I'm going to have maybe a 1 hour call with an organization, and then they're going to drop on me like 15 documents I need to assess, and then have another call and all of that. Here it was really, much more systematic process. And also in the process, we just, I guess, so thanks to iGravity being there, but we engage with more people in the organization. And that's the one thing I enjoyed, is that whomever I speak with at OST, understand that we are doing that and why we are doing it and why they see it as a game changer for their organization. It's not always the case in others because the team is really, they have small teams, they have a lot to do. So often you work with like a couple of people, but here it's really like with the other organization was exactly the same, like top level management coming in very often because it is such an important turning point for them that they will spend. It's the same, as I said, it creates the space and the mandate to worry about these matters and dedicate the time to that.
Fantastic. And then maybe Juan Carlos's question at the bottom. Morgan, would you like to pick that up? So he's looking at, have you worked in other solutions to balance this tension between providing sufficient funding for the activity to actually take place, and on the other hand, an appropriate incentive payment based on results to really incentivize that push for results. So, in this example, I think you're more skewed towards sort of short-term results than activities. How has this balance played out in your experience elsewhere?
Yeah. But maybe if we applied it to here, because on the RBF, as we were saying, it's not that all the financing is coming toward the results. So there is also financing coming upfront. And for this pilot, what we were not doing is really financing the activities of a given program. We were going on top of existing product program and really pushing the organization to do better on program quality and financial sustainability. So in this case, the usual donor funding was still there, meaning that OST was able to work on the program which were already funding, and we were coming on top. If we do it in the future, we could also have for your brain program, for example, the RBF tied to specific result of this brain. So there could be different ways of doing it. But with the RBF, you can work also quite flexibly.
Thank you very much. There's a few questions, perhaps, Julia and Morgan and Aya, you could ping through from some Raymond and Farzan just on specific. So, are any agri-SMEs either in the pilot or aim to be targeted in the later phase? Do you expect them participating in any phases? Do you expect broadening this out beyond incubators and accelerators to include networks or associations? Yes, maybe we could take those two.
I mean, our mandate hasn't changed. So basically the way we don't do call for proposals, we don't send a tender. We, again, are an enabler. And so we need to find any type of ESO who basically is very clear about, listen, I'm supporting these SMEs that are not supported by anyone else. I know why they are not. I know the type of service they need, and I'm bringing it to them in this like affordable manner to them and at a cost-efficient way, because in the long run, we are going to be self-sufficient. It's actually interesting that so we are sector agnostic, and I mentioned earlier, we work with ESOs that are either sector agnostic or that have a very strong sector focus. Again, like I mentioned, they are the experts on the ground. We are not going to push a sector on someone. It doesn't make any sense. Actually, the other ESO we decided to support for this pilot, it's working with agroecological enterprises. So here you go. And yeah, as I said, in our experience, we've been more working with incubators and accelerators because they were very much hands-on. If there are other types of support, what matters to us is seeing the outcomes and the impact. So are these companies really growing in terms of turnover, in terms of the jobs they create and safeguard, and then in terms of also being able to raise external financing when they need it to fuel their growth to get to a higher impact. That's the basis of what we are looking at. But we don't have, we have 70 countries where we can do that, and we are sector agnostic. So it's really enabling the people who have designed a model that makes sense in their market.
Great, thank you for all of that. We're running out of time, so I'm going to hand over to Harold. But before I do, I just think there's I've seen a number of messages saying lots of people are looking forward to hearing how this pilot develops. If you are interested, reach out to Julia and Aya and Morgan in follow-up. I'm sure the DCED team will be happy to follow up with you. I think the slides are going to be shared. And thank you all very much for thoughtful questions and engagement throughout this. And Harold, over to you.
Well, thank you, Harry. I think you said it all essentially. This was super interesting. Obviously, we will make the recording and the presentation available, and we will promise to stay in touch with Julia, Morgan, and Aya. And we are really looking forward to see how this pilot evolves and what kind of lessons you can feed back to us in the, I guess, year or so that you will work on this. So thank you much for bringing this to our attention, and we'll stay in touch with you. And thank you all for listening in and being part of this. All right.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be in touch for sure. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.